Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
By the time my wife left for her third missionary meeting in 2 weeks, I knew something was wrong. That sentence sounds dramatic, but you've gotta understand, I'm a pastor. I can smell trouble the way other folks smell barbecue. You spend 20 years listening to people confess every sin from I lied on my taxes to I accidentally joined a cult, your radar gets pretty sharp. My name is Reverend Jacob Moore, 43, ordained Baptist pastor in Charleston, South Carolina. I used to joke my job description was professional forgiver and part-time potluck coordinator. I led a medium-sized church with old brick walls, creaky pews, a choir that could blow the roof off, and a congregation that knew exactly how you liked your coffee before you even walked into the fellowship hall. And for most of that time, I believe my life was blessed in a very straightforward, Sunday school way. Good church. Good people. Good marriage. My wife, Emily, was our star soprano and unofficial queen of the choir loft. When she sang How Great Thou Art, even the atheists in the back row looked a little nervous, like, okay, maybe there is something up there. We'd been married 18 years. We'd weathered tight budgets, hospital scares, family drama, 2 hurricanes, and a building campaign that nearly broke me. Through it all, I thought, at least I have Emily. At least we're a team. So when the missionary meetings started, I didn't think much at first. Got a regional missions planning night over in Somerville, she said one Thursday, grabbing her keys. I'll be late, don't wait up. That was normal enough. Churches love meetings like Southern families love casseroles. The second week, she said, we're organizing an interchurch mission partnership. I might have to stay overnight, depending how long it goes. Overnight? I repeated. Yeah, we'll be praying, brainstorming, you know how it is, she said, kissing my cheek. Pastor's wife life. I laughed. Just don't recruit me for another committee. I'm still recovering from the parking lot team. She rolled her eyes in that fond way she used to. You only had to attend 2 meetings and approve 1 budget. 1 budget too many, I said. Be safe on the road. By the 3rd week, it wasn't funny anymore. Another missionary meeting? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She looked away just a second too long. Yeah. They're really trying to get this thing off the ground. Something about the way she said it, too quick, too practiced, made my stomach drop. In my field, we call that discernment. In any field, you call it a bad feeling. Still, I didn't say anything. I told myself, Jacob, you're tired. You're paranoid. Don't go borrowing trouble. If pastors started doubting every late-night meeting, half the churches in the country would burn down. So I smiled. I prayed with her at the door. I watched her taillights disappear down our little oak-lined street. Then I sat on the couch in the dark and stared at the wall. Because underneath the pastoral patience and scripture and all the training, I'm just a man. And my wife was acting strange. The truth came from one of those church ladies who always swears she doesn't like to gossip right before dropping a nuclear bomb of information in your lap. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays in church work are like the emotional hangover after Sunday. I was in my office, half writing a sermon, half fighting with the copy machine, when there was a knock on the door. Come in, I said, thinking it was Deacon Miller with another update on the broken air conditioning in the youth room. Instead, in walked Mrs. Wheeler, 71, cardigan, pearls, the kind of woman who could smell sin through drywall. Pastor, do you have a minute? She asked, voice too soft. Sure, I said, waving her to the chair. What's on your mind? She sat down, folding her hands so tightly her knuckles whitened. Now, you know me, she began. I don't like to meddle. That's when I knew something was absolutely about to be meddled in. But I was visiting my sister in Somerville last weekend, she went on, and we went out to that little diner off Highway 17, you know the one with the terrible coffee but the good pie? I know it, I said. Well, she said, while we were there I saw Emily. My heart gave a thump. Oh? With that reverend from over at New Hope Chapel. The tall one. From the next town over? Reverend Daniels. They were in a booth together. Real close. Real comfortable. She swallowed. "Pastor, it didn't look like no missionary planning to me." The room went quiet. I heard the hum of the old AC unit, the faint sound of the secretary's radio in the front office, my own pulse in my ears. "Did they see you?" I asked. "I don't think so," she said. I stepped back before they looked up. "And I've been praying ever since about whether to tell you. But then I thought, if it was you in that booth, I'd want to know." I nodded slowly. "Thank you," I said. The words felt like sandpaper in my throat. "I appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Wheeler." She reached over and patted my hand, motherly and sad. "We love you, Pastor," she said. "Whatever's going on, you're not alone." After she left, I sat there a long time. I'm not proud of the next part. Because I did exactly what I tell my congregants not to do. I jumped back and forth between denial and panic like a frog on hot pavement. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were just planning a retreat. But why didn't she say she saw him? Why the missionary vagueness? Am I overreacting? Am I crazy? Then I remembered the way she'd been different lately. Distant. Snappish. Quiet after church, where she used to float around hugging everybody like a very holy social butterfly. I thought about the extra makeup before the meetings. The new dress she'd bought for conferences. I thought about her last 3 arguments, and how every one of them had ended with her saying, "You just don't understand me anymore." My chest hurt. I picked up my Bible out of habit. It opened to some page in Isaiah. I didn't even look at the words. I just stared at the thin paper, feeling my faith, this thing that had always been so solid, start to wobble. "Really, God?" I said out loud. "This is where we're going?" If you've never yelled at God in an empty office, I don't recommend it, but I also kind of do. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. Partially because I was scared of the answer, and partially because we had a wedding rehearsal, then a hospital visit, then a board meeting, and if pastors stopped functioning every time our hearts were breaking, nothing in the church would ever get done. It finally happened on a Saturday morning. She was in the kitchen making coffee, humming something under her breath. For a second, it felt like old times, sunlight, mugs, the little dance we always did around each other in that narrow space. Then she said, "Hey, I'll be gone later today. Another missions follow-up with Grace Fellowship." And something inside me just snapped. "Is it really Grace Fellowship?" I asked. "Or is it just you and Reverend Daniels at the diner again?" She went still. The humming died. Slowly, she turned. "What did you say?" she asked. "I know," I said, heart pounding. "I know about Somerville. About the diner. About you and him." She laughed once, sharp and joyless. "Of course Mrs. Wheeler saw," she said. "That woman has binoculars for eyes." "So it's true," I said. She didn't deny it. Didn't scramble. Didn't cry. Instead, she squared her shoulders and looked me dead in the eye. "He inspires me, Jacob," she said. "You just read old words." I actually leaned back like she'd slapped me. "Old words," I repeated. "You mean scripture?" "I mean the way you use it," she snapped. "Safe. Predictable. You preach the same 3 sermons with different titles. You're stuck. He's alive. He challenges me. He makes me feel like there's more to faith than potlucks and committee meetings." I stared at her, stunned. We'd been together almost 2 decades. Through seminary, ordinations, sleepless nights. I'd known she was unhappy lately, but I thought it was burnout. Boredom. A midlife crisis we'd worked through together. I didn't think she'd climb into a booth with another pastor and hand him my wife and her heart like a church program. "Have you slept with him?" I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. She looked away. The answer sat there in the silence. "I took vows," I said. "To you. To this church. To God." She shrugged slightly. "Maybe God wants to do something new." That sentence managed to insult me, my theology, and the Lord all at once. I didn't yell. I'm not a yeller. My anger doesn't explode, it freezes. "Do you want to leave?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "I don't know." I nodded slowly. "That's honest," I said. "Hurts like hell. But it's honest." She shook her head, frustrated. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd turn this into a sermon. You only know how to talk in sermons." That one landed too. She grabbed her keys. "I'm going out." "Missionary meeting?" I asked. "Not funny," she said, and slammed the door. When it shut, the house felt huge and empty. Like a church after everyone goes home. I walked into the living room, sat in my old recliner, and tilted my head back until all I could see was ceiling. "Okay, God," I said. "What now?" Nothing thundered. No neon sign appeared. But in my gut, the place where fear had been rattling around all week, something shifted. A thought surfaced. Simple. Clear. God does not make you a victim. I sat up. "Say that again," I muttered to myself. "God does not make me a victim." I'd preached it 100 times about other people. About addiction, abuse, spiritual manipulation. Somehow I'd never applied it to my own life. I'd let my wife's affair turn me into a bystander in my own story. A sad little man with a Bible and no backbone. And suddenly I didn't want to be that man. "I'm hurt," I whispered. "But I'm not helpless." It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was resolve. The lion woke up. Once I stopped drowning in emotion, I started paying attention. And when a pastor pays attention, 2 things usually happen. 1. Somebody gets saved. 2. Somebody gets caught. It started small. One of our ushers, a young guy named Ben, came by my office. "Pastor, can I ask you something?" he said, closing the door halfway. "Sure," I said. "What's up?" He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't want to cause trouble, but I've seen Emily going into the finance room alone a lot lately. After service. With those offering envelopes." My skin pricked. "The locked ones?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "She always waves me off. Says she's helping the counters. But she's usually alone when she does it." "She's not on the counting team," I said slowly. "I know," he said. "That's why it felt off." The next day, Mrs. Johnson from the finance committee asked to have a word. "We've been short the past few weeks," she said, fussing with her bracelet. "The reports don't match the deposits." I thought it was my old eyes. But I had my granddaughter check. "The numbers are wrong. Missing cash, mostly." "How much?" I asked. "Not enough to notice the first time," she said. "But enough to notice by the third." "And the only people with access?" I asked. "Me, Deacon Taylor, and your wife," she said. "But I know it's not me, and I doubt it's Deacon Taylor. So. Then one of the choir ladies, sweet little alto named Paige, came to me after rehearsal. "Pastor, I really hate to say this, but I saw Emily slip some offering envelopes into her purse last Sunday," she whispered. "I thought maybe she was bringing them to you, but now, I don't know." By the third report, it wasn't gossip anymore. It was a pattern. Emily was cheating on me. But she was also stealing. From the church. From the people who put crumpled bills in envelopes with notes like, "For missions and for the youth fund and because God got me through chemo this year." Something inside me that had been broken around the affair solidified around this. This wasn't just my hurt now. This was ours. This was a violation of trust far bigger than a marriage. And she thought no one would dare expose her. Because she was the pastor's wife. She thought she was untouchable. That night, I waited for her to come home. She walked in around 9, tossed her bag on the table, and jumped when she saw me sitting in the dark. "Jacob. You scared me," she said. "We need to talk," I said. "If this is about me eating the last piece of pie, can it wait?" She muttered, flicking on a lab. "It's about the offerings," I said. She went still. "The what?" she asked. "The donation lockbox," I said. "The envelopes. The missing cash." She forced a laugh. You've been listening to church gossip again. I've been listening to consistent reports from multiple people who don't talk to each other, I said. And to the financial statements. And to the deposit slips. Emily, are you taking money from the church? She stared at me, jaw clenched. You're really going to stand there and accuse me? She said. After everything I've done for that place? For you? That isn't an answer, I said. She took a step toward me, lowering her voice like we had an audience. Think about this, she said. Who are they going to believe if you say something? The pastor who couldn't keep his wife interested? Or the sweet choir girl who's been here through every potluck and fundraiser? There it was. The thing she was banking on. Not her innocence. Her image. You won't do it, she said, seeing something in my face. You won't air our dirty laundry in front of the whole church. You'd rather die than cause a scandal. It'd ruin you too. You don't have the guts. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I'd prayed with, laughed with, held through storms. And I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. She didn't know me at all. Emily, I said quietly, I love you. I probably always will in some way. But I'm not going to let you use that love as a shield to hurt other people. She scoffed. Oh, look at you. Big righteous pastor man. I'm a shepherd, I said. My job is to protect the flock. Even if the wolf is wearing my wife's voice. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said. But on Sunday, I'm going to tell the truth. Calmly. Clearly. And I've already talked to the authorities. Her face drained of color. You didn't, she whispered. I did, I said. They have the records. The testimonies. This is bigger than you and me now. You'll regret this, she spat. They'll turn on you. We'll see, I said. She grabbed her bag and stormed down the hall. I sat there, shaking a little, surprised I was still in one piece. Then I took a deep breath, opened my Bible, not at random, this time on purpose, and started sketching out the hardest sermon of my life. Sunday morning came bright and clear, like the weather didn't get the memo. The church filled up. People greeted each other, whispered little hellos, flipped through bulletins. The choir assembled, buzzing quietly. Emily wasn't in the loft. I'd asked her not to sing that day. My heart beat fast, but my hands didn't shake. That surprised me. When it was time, I stepped up to the pulpit. Good morning, I said. Before we sing, before we open the word, I need to talk to you. Not as a preacher, but as your brother. The room quieted faster than I'd ever seen. Over the past few weeks, I said, I've become aware of some things that have deeply grieved my heart. I paused. You could have heard a communion wafer drop. It has been brought to my attention that someone in a position of trust here has been misusing that trust. Specifically, by taking money from our offerings. From the gifts you give in faith. People shifted, looked at each other. And after investigation, I continued, voice steady, it is clear that person is my wife, Emily. Gasps. A few muffled cries. Someone dropped a hymnal. I took a breath. I want you to hear this from me, not from rumors, I said. There has also been an inappropriate relationship between her and another pastor from a neighboring church. These two matters are connected, because where there is deception, it tends to spread. I didn't give details. This wasn't about humiliating her. It was about truth. I have reported the theft to the proper authorities, I said. Law enforcement is involved. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I wanted to protect you, and the integrity of this house. Right then, two officers, who'd been waiting in the foyer at my request, stepped into the back of the sanctuary. Emily, who'd slipped in and was standing along the side wall, saw them and went pale. This is not the Sunday any of us wanted, I said. But it's the Sunday we have. And I want you to know something very clearly, my faith is not in a perfect marriage. Or a perfect church. My faith is in a perfect God, who can handle our mess and still bring mercy. One of the officers walked quietly down the aisle. Mrs. Moore, he said gently. We need you to come with us. She looked around desperately. You're all just going to let him do this?" she cried. "After everything I've done for this church?" A few people cried. A few looked away. And then, slowly, one older gentleman stood. "We're praying for you, Emily," he said softly. "But we stand with truth." Others murmured agreement. She glared at me like I'd set her afire. Then the officers led her out. When the doors closed, the room sat in stunned silence. I cleared my throat. "I won't pretend this isn't painful," I said. "For you. For me. For everyone who loves her. But I also won't pretend God is surprised by any of this. He's not wringing his hands going, 'Oh no, what now?' He's still who he's always been." I opened my Bible. And today, if you'll allow me, I'd like to talk about grace. Not the soft, pretty kind. The kind that's forged in fire. We read. We cried. We even laughed a little, because honestly, sometimes all you can do is laugh and say, "Well, Lord, that escalated quickly." After the service, people lined up, not to yell, not to leave, but to hug me. "We're here, Pastor. We've got you. You did the right thing." Mrs. Wheeler squeezed my hand. "Told you you weren't alone," she whispered. For the first time in a long while, I felt supported. Seen. Not just as the guy up front, but as a human being. That afternoon, I sat on my porch, listening to the cicadas, the neighborhood kids, the distant siren. And I thought, okay. The worst part happened. And I'm still here. God hadn't made me a victim. He'd made me a witness. The next year was a blur of endings. The divorce went through. Quietly, mercifully, without a courtroom showdown. Emily pled out on the charges. Got a sentence that involved probation, restitution, and a whole lot of mandated counseling. I prayed for her. Not every day. Some days I was too mad. But often enough I meant it. The church carried on, but it was different. Some folks left, because scandal makes people itchy. Others stayed, determined to prove that a church is more than the sum of its sinners. As for me, I began to feel like a man living in a house that had burned down and been rebuilt in the same footprint. Same address. Different structure. Too many memories charred into the walls. One evening, the board chairman, a calm, steady guy named Marcus, invited me to dinner. "You look tired, Pastor," he said over fried shrimp. "I am tired," I said. "In my bones." He nodded. "We love you. You know that. And we're grateful you stayed when this first blew up. But I also wonder," he hesitated, "if maybe God's got something new for you." "Like what?" I asked. "Pastors don't exactly apply on LinkedIn." He smiled. "I don't know. But I keep hearing you talk about grace and fire and rebuilding like it's not just a sermon, it's your life now." I laughed. "Well, it is." "What if there was a new church," he said slowly, "built for people who know what it's like to walk through fire? Not just sinners in theory, but people with smoke still on their clothes?" I stared at him. My heart did a little jump. "That sounds exhausting," I said. He grinned. "Or it sounds exactly like you." It took months of prayer, planning, and paperwork. A pastor starting a new church is like a middle-aged man starting a band. You have to convince people this isn't just a phase. But doors kept opening. A small, old church building on the edge of town that had been sitting empty for years suddenly became available, cheap. Volunteers from my old congregation helped paint walls, fix pews, clean out classrooms that still had flannel-graphed nativity sets from 1987. We held interest meetings in my living room. People shared their stories. Addiction. Divorce. Bankruptcy. Affairs. Church hurt. Faith lost and found. "This isn't going to be a shiny church," I told them. "This is going to be a forge. A place where broken things are melted down and made new. Slowly. Honestly. Together." We needed a name. We tossed around a dozen. New Hope. Second Chance. Restoration Chapel. All good. All taken by at least 4 churches within a 20-mile radius. Then one of the younger guys, a 30-something who'd gone through a nasty divorce, said, "Pastor, you're always talking about how your grace came through fire. What about something like that?" And it clicked. "Grace forged in fire," I said. Everyone went quiet, the good kind of quiet. "That's intense," someone said. "So is surviving," I replied. They nodded. And just like that, we had a name. Our first Sunday at Grace Forged in Fire, I stood at the front of that little refurbished sanctuary, looking out at the mismatched folding chairs, the second-hand sound system, the walls still faintly smelling of fresh paint. People trickled in. Some from my old church. Some from other churches. Some from no church at all, lured by curiosity or desperation or both. I walked up to the pulpit, the same cheap wooden one that had probably been there since the Carter administration, and smiled. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Jacob Moore. I am a pastor. I am also divorced. My wife cheated on me with another preacher and stole money from my church. I told the truth, and it hurt like crazy. If you're here, I'm guessing you've got your own fire stories." A few people laughed. A few nodded, eyes already shiny. "This is not a place for perfect people," I said. "This is a place for melted down, patched together, limping, laughing survivors. This is a place where grace isn't pretty, it's forged. Hammered. Tempered. Stronger than what came before." I paused. "And if nothing else," I added, "at least you'll get some good stories." They laughed, full and loud. And as the music started, no big choir, just a guitar, a keyboard, and a couple of brave singers, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Joy. Not the clean, polished kind. The kind you get on the other side of a fire. The kind you can eventually look back on and, somehow, someday, laugh about. Because yeah, my life fell apart. But God didn't make me a victim. He made me a pastor with a heck of a testimony and a church called Grace Forged in Fire. And honestly, that's a pretty good punchline. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.